Dad, we need $25,000, like right now. That's how it started, not, hi Dad, how are you? Or thanks for helping us move last month. Just straight to the point. Standing in my kitchen at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, coffee still brewing. I'm Bill Thompson, 52 years old, and I thought I'd heard everything after raising 2 kids. Turns out I was wrong. My daughter Amy stood there in her yoga pants and designer jacket, the one that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Her husband Zach was behind her, looking at his phone like this conversation didn't concern him. Classic move. 25,000, I repeated, setting down my mug. What for? Zach made some bad investments. Crypto stuff. The credit cards are maxed, and we're behind on the mortgage. She said it like she was asking me to water their plants while they were out of town. I looked at Zach, still staring at his phone. 30 years old and acting like his financial mess was someone else's problem to solve. Maybe Zach should explain this himself, I said. He finally looked up. It's complicated, Bill. Market volatility and all that. But we'll pay you back. Market volatility. Right. That's what we're calling gambling with the house payment now. Here's the thing, nobody tells you about having adult children. Sometimes you realize you did too good a job protecting them. Amy never had to worry about money growing up. Never saw me stress about bills or work overtime to keep the lights on. To her, Dad was just this guy who magically made problems disappear. We already asked Mom, Amy added, like that was supposed to sweeten the deal. She thinks you should help us. Of course Nancy thought I should help. My wife had a soft spot for our kids that was about as wide as the Grand Canyon. She'd give them our retirement savings if they asked nicely enough. Your mom doesn't know about our 401k situation, I said quietly. That got Amy's attention. What about it? I'd been dreading this conversation with Nancy for months. The company was restructuring. Early retirement packages were being offered to guys like me, 52, been there 28 years, making decent money but not essential to the new direction. Take the package or risk getting laid off later with nothing. I'm probably getting bought out at work. We need every penny for retirement. Amy's face changed. Not to understanding, to frustration. But this is an emergency, Dad. An emergency. Like Zach's crypto gambling was the same as a medical bill or a car accident. You know what was an emergency? I said, feeling my patience slip. When you called me at 2 a.m. because your car broke down sophomore year. When Zach got fired from his last job and you needed help with rent. When you decided to have that expensive wedding you couldn't afford. Let me tell you about that wedding. $15,000 we gave them as a gift because Amy wanted the perfect day. Open bar, fancy venue, photographer who charged more than I make in a month. They promised it was a one-time thing. That was 3 years ago. Then there was the time Zach lost his job at the marketing firm. Just until I get back on my feet, he said. We covered their rent for 4 months, $600 to $800, got back maybe $2,000 of it. The car repairs, the credit card emergencies, the time Amy's laptop died right before a big presentation. Always something, always urgent, always our problem to solve. Dad, that's not fair, Amy said. Fair? I've given you guys almost $35,000 over the past 5 years. Did you think I wasn't keeping track? Because I was. I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app where I'd been documenting every loan. Wedding gift, $15,000. Rent assistance, $6,800. Car repair, $3,200. Credit card help, $4,500. Laptop, $1,800. Mask emergencies, $3,700. The kitchen went quiet except for the coffee maker finishing its cycle. Zach was back to looking at his phone. Amy was staring at me like I'd suddenly started speaking Chinese. We always paid you back, she said finally. You paid back maybe $12,000. And only after I had to ask 3 times each time. This wasn't how I wanted this conversation to go. I love my daughter. I love her enough to have bailed her out more times than I can count. But somewhere along the way, helping her turned into enabling her. And enabling her meant enabling him. Look, I said, trying to soften my voice. You're adults. You have jobs. Figure it out. Amy's eyes got that look, the same one she had at 16 when I wouldn't let her take the car to some party. Pure disbelief that I was saying no. I can't believe you're being this selfish, she said. Selfish. For wanting to keep the money I'd worked 28 years to save. For not wanting to drain my retirement account to cover my son-in-law's crypto losses. Amy, I'm 52. I've got maybe 13 more working years if I'm lucky. This money has to last Nancy and me for the next 30 years. You can always work longer. And there it was, the thing that really bothered me. Not just that she wanted the money, but that she thought I owed it to her. That my retirement, my plans, my life after work, all of that was secondary to whatever crisis she and Zach had created this week. I thought about my dad, who worked until he was 68 because he never learned to say no to family. Died 2 years into retirement, never got to enjoy a single day of the life he'd earned. Get out, I said quietly. Dad, get out of my house. Both of you. They left, but not before Amy told me I was being unreasonable and that she was going to talk to Mom. Zach never said a word, just followed her out like a lost puppy, still scrolling through his phone. Probably checking his crypto portfolio to see how much more money he'd lost. I called in sick to work that day. First time in 3 years. Instead, I sat in my garage looking at all the tools I'd collected over the decades. The workbench I built when Amy was 10, teaching her how to measure twice and cut once. The lawnmower I'd used to show my son Tommy that work ethic matters more than talent. The fishing gear that never got used anymore because everyone was too busy. Everything in that garage represented time. Time working overtime to afford better tools. Time teaching my kids lessons they apparently hadn't learned. Time I'd never get back. Nancy came home around 6, already armed for battle. Amy called me crying, she said before she even put her purse down. I figured. Bill, they're in real trouble. They're in trouble they created. She's our daughter. She's a 28-year-old woman who's never learned to live within her means because we keep bailing her out. Nancy set her purse down hard on the counter. Since when did you become so cold? Since I realized we're not helping her. We're hurting her. We fought for 2 hours. Nancy thought I was being heartless. I thought she was being naive. Same argument we'd had every time one of the kids needed money, except this time I wasn't backing down. Remember when Tommy asked for help with his security deposit, I said? What did we tell him? That was different. He was just starting out. It was $800. We told him to save up for it. He worked extra shifts for 2 months and figured it out himself. That's because Tommy's always been more responsible. Tommy's more responsible because we made him be responsible. We never gave Amy that chance. Nancy went quiet for a minute, staring out the kitchen window at Amy's old swing set, the one I'd spent a weekend building when she was 7. What if we just helped them this one last time? She said finally. You said that about the wedding. You said that when Zach lost his job. You said that about the car repair. This is bigger. They'll always be bigger, Nancy. Next time it'll be a down payment on a house they can't afford. Then it'll be help with daycare costs for kids they're not ready for. When does it end? She didn't have an answer for that. What if it was Tommy? She asked. Our son was 25, just started his career, actually responsible with money. Tommy wouldn't ask. But what if he did? Then I'd tell him the same thing. Figure it out. The truth is, Tommy had asked for help once. Last year, his transmission went out. $3,400 repair. He called to ask if I knew any good mechanics, maybe someone who'd give him a deal. Never once asked for money. I offered to lend it to him, and he said he'd rather work overtime and save up for a reliable used car instead. That's the difference between my kids. One learned that problems are meant to be solved. The other learned that problems are meant to be handed off to Dad. Nancy slept in the guest room that night, and the next night. By Thursday, she was making comments about how I'd changed, how I used to care about family. Thursday evening, Tommy called. Dad, what's going on? Amy's posting all over Facebook about family loyalty and being abandoned. Your sister wants me to pay off Zach's gambling debts. Ah, long pause. How much? $25,000. Jesus. Dad, you know you don't owe them that, right? It was good to hear someone say it. Your mother thinks I do. Mom's got a blind spot when it comes to Amy. Always has. Tommy was right. When Amy was in high school, she crashed her car, texting and driving. Nancy's first concern wasn't that Amy could have killed someone. It was making sure Amy didn't lose her phone privileges. When Amy dropped out of college halfway through junior year to find herself, Nancy supported her decision. When Amy moved in with Zach after knowing him for 3 months, Nancy said love was all that mattered. I'd gone along with it because keeping the peace was easier than fighting. But easy isn't always right. Friday morning, Amy showed up again, this time with backup, my brother Mike and his wife Carol. We're having an intervention, Carol announced, like I was some kind of alcoholic. They'd all talked, apparently. decided I was going through some kind of midlife crisis, that I was being unreasonable and selfish and probably needed therapy. "This isn't like you, Bill," Mike said. "You've always been the guy who helps family." They had it all figured out. I should take out a home equity loan if cash was tight. I should talk to my financial advisor about liquidating some investments. I should cash in part of my 401k and pay the penalty. I should do whatever it took to help my daughter in her time of need. Nobody asked what I wanted. Nobody asked if maybe, just maybe, it was time for Amy and Zach to solve their own problems. "You know what's funny?" I said, looking around at all of them sitting in my living room. "Not one of you has asked Zach to get a second job, or Amy to sell her car and get something cheaper, or them to move to a smaller apartment. The only solution anyone can think of is that I should give them my money." "Because you have it," Amy said. "I have it because I worked for it. Because I didn't spend it on crypto and expensive dinners and designer clothes. So we should live like peasants? You should live like adults." Mike leaned forward. "Bill, look at the big picture here. It's just money. Just money." Easy for him to say. Mike was a dentist, made twice what I did, had his kids' college funds fully loaded by the time they were 10. He'd never had to choose between fixing the furnace and taking a vacation. Never had to work overtime just to cover Christmas presents. "It's not just money, Mike. It's my future. Nancy's future. We're 52 years old. This isn't monopoly money we're talking about." Carol jumped in. "But Bill, family comes first. Your parents would have done anything for you. My parents." There it was. Carol knew exactly which button to push. My dad worked double shifts at the steel mill for 35 years, gave my brother and me everything we needed and half of what we wanted. When Mike needed money for dental school, Dad took out a second mortgage. When I needed help with my first house down payment, he cashed in bonds he'd been saving for retirement. Dad died at 70, 2 years after finally retiring. Heart attack while mowing the lawn of the little house he'd moved to after selling the family home to help pay for Mike's practice. "You're right," I said quietly. "Dad would have given us anything. And you know what that got him? He died broke and exhausted, never got to enjoy a single day of the retirement he worked his whole life for." The room went quiet. I'm not making that mistake. That's when I knew I was done. Not just with this conversation, but with all of it. The guilt trips, the family meetings, the assumption that my money was everyone else's emergency fund. I went upstairs, packed a bag, and came back down. They were still arguing among themselves about how unreasonable I was being. "I'm going camping for a few days," I announced. "Bill, you can't just run away from this," Nancy said. "Watch me." I walked out, got in my truck, drove north. But I didn't go camping. I drove straight to my bank, moved most of our money to a new account that only I could access, then kept driving. 12 hours straight until I hit a little town called Grayling in northern Michigan, population maybe 2,000. Found a motel called the Pine Rest Inn, paid cash for a week. The clerk, a woman about my age with kind eyes, didn't ask questions when I requested a room far from the road. I sat on the bed and finally felt like I could breathe again. The room was simple. 2 double beds, a small table, a TV that got maybe 6 channels. The carpet was probably older than Amy and the wallpaper had seen better decades. But it was quiet. And it was mine. No one demanding anything from me. No one making me feel guilty for wanting to keep what I'd earned. I called my boss Monday morning, told him I was taking all my accumulated vacation time, 3 weeks worth. Then I called Nancy. "Where are you?" she demanded. "Away." "This is ridiculous, Bill. Come home so we can talk about this like adults. Adults don't demand other people pay their debts. She's our daughter, and I'm your husband." But apparently that doesn't matter as much as keeping Amy happy. I hung up, turned off my phone. For the first day, I did absolutely nothing. Watched terrible daytime TV. Game shows where people got excited about winning blenders and vacuum cleaners. Talk shows where people aired their dirty laundry for the entertainment of strangers. It all seemed so ridiculous compared to my family's drama. On day 2, I walked around town. Grayling was built around the Au Sable River, a place where people came to fish and canoe and get away from whatever was chasing them in the real world. I ate breakfast at a diner called Spike's Keg O'Nails, where the coffee was strong and the waitress called me hon without irony. "You're not from around here," she said, refilling my cup. "No, ma'am, just passing through." "Well, you picked a good place to pass through. Nice and quiet. Good for thinking. She was right. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could hear myself think. Away from Amy's demands and Nancy's guilt trips and everyone else's opinions about what I should do with my money. On day 3, I bought a fishing license and some basic gear. Hadn't fished in probably 10 years, but it came back quickly. Standing in the river at sunrise, watching the mist rise off the water, I remembered what peace felt like. Day 4, I called Tommy. Dad? Where are you? Mom's going crazy. I'm fine. How are you handling all this? There was a pause. Honestly, I think Amy and Zach are idiots. They make more money than I do, but they're always broke. It's not your job to fix their mess. My youngest kid got it. The one who'd never asked for money, never assumed the world owed him anything. Tommy, can I ask you something? Do you think I'm a bad father? What? No, Dad. You're the best father I know. That's why this whole thing is so messed up. Amy's trying to make you feel guilty for not enabling her anymore. We talked for an hour. About his job at the engineering firm, about his girlfriend Sarah who was finishing nursing school, about anything except family drama. It was the first normal conversation I'd had in weeks. You know what's crazy? Tommy said before we hung up. Amy posted on Facebook that you abandoned the family, but she never mentioned why, just made it sound like you had some kind of breakdown. What did you say? I commented that maybe people should ask why before they judge, got a bunch of angry face emojis from her friends. After we hung up, I sat by the river until dark, thinking about the difference between my kids. Tommy had learned early that actions have consequences. When he was 16 and got a speeding ticket, I made him pay the fine and the insurance increase. When he wanted a better car, he worked summers and saved up. When he chose engineering school, he researched scholarships and picked a state school he could afford. Amy learned something different. She learned that Dad would always be there to fix things, and I'd taught her that by never letting her fail. On day 5, I drove to Traverse City, bought Nancy flowers, and headed home. Amy's car was in my driveway when I pulled up. She was inside with Nancy, both of them red-eyed from crying. Dad! Amy jumped up when I walked in. Thank God you're okay. We thought something happened to you. I'm fine. Where were you? Thinking. Nancy looked at me like I was a stranger. Bill, you scared us to death. You can't just disappear like that. Sure I can. I'm 52 years old. I can go wherever I want. Amy started crying again. Daddy, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause all this trouble. We figured out another way to get the money. Good for you. We borrowed from Zach's parents. Of course they did. Moved on to the next available cash machine. We also talked to a financial counselor, Amy added quickly. She helped us make a budget. We're going to sell my car and get something cheaper. And Zach's looking for a second job. I studied my daughter's face. She looked older somehow, like the past week had aged her. That's good, Amy. That's what adults do. I want you both to leave now, I said calmly. Dad, please, let's just forget this whole thing happened. I'm not going to forget it, and neither should you. This was a lesson, Amy. I hope you learned something from it. She looked confused. What lesson? That I'm not your personal bank? That your problems are your responsibility to solve? That being family doesn't mean I owe you whatever you want whenever you want it? But I said I was sorry. Sorry doesn't fix the pattern, Amy. This was the 4th time in 5 years you've asked for money. Every time you promised it was the last time. Every time you made it sound like an emergency that only I could solve. They left eventually, but not before Amy hugged me tight and whispered, I really am sorry, Daddy. I never thought about what this was doing to you. Nancy and I went to counseling. Dr. Martinez, a woman about our age who'd clearly seen this family dynamic before. It took us 6 months to get back to normal, and even then, things were different. Better in some ways. Nancy finally understood why I'd reached my limit. I enabled her too, Nancy admitted during one session. I thought being a good mother meant always saying yes. Amy didn't speak to me for 3 months. When she finally called, it was to tell me she and Zach had paid off 2 of their credit cards and built up a $2,000 emergency fund. We're actually sticking to the budget, she said, sounding surprised. And Zach got promoted at his second job. We might be able to pay back Zach's parents by Christmas. Good for you. And Dad, thank you. For what? For finally saying no. I needed to hear it. She was right. She did need to hear it. And I needed to say it. These days, Amy and Zach are doing fine. They moved to a smaller apartment, sold the expensive car, actually stick to a budget. Zach got promoted again and quit the second job. Amy started freelancing on the side. They figured it out just like I knew they could. I'm still working, but by choice now. The early retirement package is still on the table, but I'm not desperate to take it. Nancy and I are planning a cruise for our 30th anniversary, with our own money. Tommy got engaged to Sarah last month. When I offered to help with the wedding, he said, "Thanks, Dad, but we've got it covered. We've been saving up." And I've learned something important. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your kids is refuse to save them from their own mistakes. Sometimes you have to disappear for a while so they can find themselves. Sometimes being a good father means being the bad guy. I'm okay with that now.